over the years, I've given away several of these digital Sony HandyCams. And this is a kind of a generic introductory run through on the highlights. But if you look on the bottom of the HandyCam, it will give the exact model number, and you should be able to get a full instruction manual in a PDF file on the internet. Okay, this is the camera. The battery is on the rear end of the camera. Obviously, that's the front. There is a lens cover that is easy to get on and off. It just clicks on and off. And then back toward the back is a little door that opens, which is for the charger. The charger comes with an electrical plug that plugs into a wall, and the other end plugs into this camera. And when the camera is charging, a little light goes on toward the back of the camera. Now the camera will charge until the light goes off, the battery charges. This battery is a long life battery. But again, if you're going to buy another battery, be sure and buy it for this model. And you also need to understand that the normal battery is probably just 1 hour. This battery should run this camera for 2 to 3 hours at least. And I've had great success. And these cameras are perfect for placement of looking at wildlife because you can check it periodically. And then when you get done filming, there is a opening in the back for the SD card. The SD card goes up here. The lighting is not the greatest. You can also see at the bottom, this is a clip to put the camera on a tripod. I'm leaving this on this particular camera, but the SD cards are commonly available. The thing to make sure about when you buy or get an SD card is how many gigabytes it stores. This camera uses between 2 and 3 gigabytes per 30 minutes. It's high definition, and yet it's small. You can see the camera itself is really not that, it's about the size of my hand, even with the battery. These are incredibly good cameras. You can hide them in bushes. When I film bald eagles and other birds, I do not disturb them. I film from a distance. And that's because the camera, first of all, it's small, it's clear, it can be put on a tripod, and it has a great zoom lens. And after zooming in, the camera remains clear, unless obviously it's too dark. But this camera will film into very low light. Now, when the camera's charged, this is the way it looks, obviously. There's the one side of the camera. Here's the other side. It has a little thing to carry. There's the front. I've already talked about the battery. When you're ready to film, you open up. This just pops right open, and you can see it gives you a picture, but you are not filming until you press this little button over here. That button starts and stops the camera. And again, battery life is a factor, but with this kind of battery, you can film many, many things. And this battery should last for, I would say, at least 3 hours of video, high definition video. So this, when you film, just press that button and you're in business. You do have to leave the viewer open. Unfortunately, in this camera, there is no eyeball viewer. That's one of the disadvantages of it. So it's like filming from an iPhone or something. You're looking at the full picture, so to speak. You're not looking through an eyeball viewfinder. And there are times with I have another camera that has a very good eyeball viewfinder, but it uses tape. And tape is very difficult to deal with, frankly. There are cameras that are made that are very expensive, that are digital, that have eyeball viewfinders and all that. But this camera is incredibly versatile. After a person is done filming, I'm going back to the underside of the camera to show you this. The light is not that good. You can see this little thing that opens and closes on the back. You don't need to take off the tripod thing to get your, if I push in on this, the SD card, it's in there, it just pops out. And obviously you need to use either a computer that has an SD slot, and most of them do, or an adapter of some kind. But the important thing is to buy a card. I would buy a card that has at a minimum 32 gigabytes, at a minimum. And sometimes, nowadays, these are on sale. You can buy 2 or 3 for the price of one. Sometimes I use 64 gigabytes, but remember, these cards, even though they hold 32 gigabytes, if you're filming for 3 or 4 hours, that should be fine. I always empty or download the files, the video files from the video card every time I film something, A, so I can keep track of it, and B, so I can free up space. And then I charge, after I'm done downloading, I recharge the camera, again, using this little thing, this little door, that little charging door on the side. Here we go. I'm sorry, I'm using rather dim light. But when you hold this camera and look at it, there are very few parts. It's easy to operate with no problem. Just takes getting used to. There are instruction manuals, but again, look on the bottom side of the camera and get the manual on the internet. There are also suppliers, especially on eBay, and I think now Amazon.com. And there are also camera stores on the internet, very, very good camera stores, to buy extra if you need to replenish your battery. These batteries last a long time if you keep them dry and take care of them, but you may have to replace a battery, or you may want a spare battery. And so that's just, but there's a lot of information about these cameras on the internet. You will need editing software to edit these files. So when you download, excuse me, when you download the first file to your computer, right-click on it and go to Properties, and it will tell you more about the exact type of file. Most common editing software edits these files with no problem. And then you can transform the file to a Windows Media Video WMV file, or to various Apple compatible files. I use PCs, so all my videos are transformed to WMV, Windows Media Video files. There are also a lot of programs that convert video files from one thing to another, and those are very inexpensive, frankly, and easy to use. And there are online conversion things as well. One of the forks in the road is, are you using mostly Apple software, or are you using PC compatible software? I grew up with, and I've always stuck with PC-based compatible software. So I use a software called Sony Vegas, and that's been great. It's not that expensive. It's been great. But frankly, I think right now I'm in the minority. I think most people use Apple-based software, and Apple computers come with that. But these files are compatible with, or can be converted to, editable files that you can use with editing software. Now, when I'm filming birds and various things, I'm filming in all kinds of conditions. And so I use the editing software not just to edit and cut the sections of the file that I want to make into a distributable file, distributable on YouTube or anywhere else. And YouTube, by the way, is extremely flexible in terms of the file types it takes. But I use it not just to cut down the sections I want, but I frequently use software to slightly increase the brightness, contrast, things of that kind, especially if I'm filming very early in the morning or in other kinds of conditions where the lighting is not what I want. Some of the software can also increase the saturation. For example, if you're filming in a green wooded area in relative darkness, you can add a little bit of green tint to the picture without making it look totally strange and too much. You just have to experiment with this. But I use the brightness and contrast, and I also use another setting on most of these editing things have, of the sharpness. I increase the sharpness sometimes slightly, again, especially if I'm filming in lower light. So that is a very homemade tutorial about the basics, and there are tons of resources on the internet about these cameras, their parts, the batteries, how to operate them. There are various groups you can join to talk about this type of video. But the way I learned the best is just by doing it, trial and error, doing it, framing the video the way I want, using the zoom. That's very important to what you're doing. You can crop in the editing software. You can crop something. You can, if you have a wide shot, you can crop it down. You can do just about anything. You can do transitions. You can put narrations in, music. Some people put music into their videos and all that. I try to let the birds speak for themselves. The other thing is sound. If you're filming birds and you have editing software, you can enhance the sound, and you can also extract the sound if you wish from most editing software, so that you have a sound file. And then in the editing, if the bird sound is very faint and you want it to be a little stronger so people hear it better, you can also enhance that. All right, well, that's about all I have for my homemade instructions on these digital cameras. But these are inexpensive, but I've used them for almost 10 years, and I've probably shot 10,000 hours of video on these, and then I pick what I want, and they are very easy to use. So good luck.